Dean Sonobe is the Dean and CEO of the Asian Development Bank Institute. Under his leadership, ADBI continues to drive impactful policy research and capacity building initiatives to support a more prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia and the Pacific. With his deep expertise and commitment to advancing policy solutions for sustainable development, we are privileged to have him with us today. Please join me welcoming Dean Tatsushi Sonobe. Dean Sonobe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just on yeah. Okay. So good afternoon, distinguished speakers, esteemed guests, and colleagues. Welcome to this webinar on enhancing social protection and gender equality in the gig economy, which are high on the agenda of many governments in the Asia-Pacific region. It's an honor to provide some remarks on behalf of the Asian Development Bank Institute. It's howling. What's
Yes,
wrong?
we have a howling now. Maybe.
Oh, this one. Okay. How about this? Okay.
It's better.
So it's an honor to provide some remarks on behalf of the Asian Development Bank Institute as we gather to explore this important policy issue with distinguished speakers. The gig economy has grown rapidly in recent years, driven by the development of communication technology and the digital platforms. What began as a niche form of employment is now making its strong presence in labor markets almost across the world. The World Bank's 2023 report on online gig workers estimates that the number of online gig workers is somewhere between 154 million and 435 million, or 4.4% and 12.5% of the global labor force. Gig workers are often classified as independent contractors rather than employees. Being a kind of contractors offers those workers some flexibility, as they can work from virtually anywhere and set their own work schedules. However, as more workers enter this sector, the structural challenges have become apparent. One of the most pressing issues faced by gig workers is the lack of social protection. So unlike employees in the conventional sense, gig workers often do not have access to benefits such as health insurance, paid leave, and retirement savings. They are vulnerable to financial instability, especially during times of illness, injury, or macroeconomic shocks. This was clear during the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, gender inequality is another major concern. Women often face compounded challenges, including lower pay, limited participation, and higher risks. These issues are made worse by the informal nature of gig work, where workers have limited options for resolving disputes and lack collective bargaining power. As the gig economy continues to grow, it's critical to ensure that its benefits reach all individuals. Those in lower skilled positions, in particular, need stronger protection against financial instability and unsafe working conditions. Today, distinguished experts are with us and will share their insights on this field with us. We will explore the opportunities and challenges of the gig economy. We will then discuss measures to ensure social protection for gig workers. Our discussion today aims at sharing experiences and successful initiatives and identify policy recommendations that can help create a fair and secure work environment. We express our gratitude to our speakers and distinguished discussants for taking their time to join us and sharing their expertise with us. Your insights will contribute to a deeper understanding of the issues at hand. We would like to extend sincere appreciation to all participants for joining us today. It is through shared experiences and collective efforts that we can develop meaningful solutions to address these challenges. I wish you all a very, very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dean Sonobe, for those insightful remarks. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce our second speaker for the opening remarks, Ms. Kim Song-song. Ms. Song is the Director of Human and Social Development Sector Office at the Asian Development Bank. With over 20 years of experience in international development, she has led ADB's program in education, skill development, health, social protections across South Asia and the Pacific for more than a decade. We are honored to have her with us today. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Gin Song Song. Director Gin Song Song, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, distinguished guest and dear colleagues, and then respected Dean Sonove. Thank you very much. This is my pleasure to welcome you to all today's webinar, Enhancing Social Protection and Gender Equality in the Gig Economy. This is joint webinar organized by Asian Development Bank and then Asian Development Bank Institute. As Dean Sonobe highlighted the challenges, the rapid expansion of the gig economy has transformed the labor market worldwide, offering flexible work opportunities and low barriers to entry, particularly for women and youth. But this actually shift has also exposed critical gaps in the social protection, leaving many gig workers without access to essential safety net against like a life cycle challenges such as health concerns, income insecurity, and unemployment in between the jobs, and then also very importantly the retirement preparation. So the protection around consists of the health insurance and the income security measures and the retirement savings is such an important issue. And then this is like a kind of time bomb for us. And then many countries actually facing these challenges, and then these issues like rapidly evolving. So no one country actually conquered this issue. So we are all kind of learning from the process of finding solutions, and in this regard, actually sharing our knowledge and understanding of the issues and the possible solutions being deployed and the lessons from them is very, very important. So this webinar aims to shed light on these pressing issues by bringing together with experts and policymakers to discuss the innovative strategies for closing the social protection gaps for gig workers. And then we hope, by addressing these issues, we should be able to also answer some of the important questions related to social protection for the other types of informal sector workers as well. Drawing from both global experience and regional case studies, we will explore how different countries, including Korea and India, are addressing these challenges. Korea's approach to expanding industrial accident and employment insurance to platform workers offers key insights, while India's new initiatives, which was announced quite recently, such as the introduction of an identification card for gig workers, marked important steps towards a greater inclusion. As we navigate the future of work, it is imperative that social protection frameworks evolve to ensure that all workers, regardless of gender or employment classification, can access the support they need. I encourage all participants to engage actively in today's discussion so that we may work towards inclusive and sustainable solutions together. Thank you very much, and I look forward to a productive exchange of ideas. Thank you.
Without wasting much time, I'd like to take on to invite our speaker, Dr. Raja Rajendra Timchina. He's an economist consultant at Asian Development Bank Institute. Previously, he worked as an associate professor. He's an experimental economist. He will be presenting a paper titled Estimating Social Welfare Program, Demand Among Informal Workers in Urban India, Evidence from Lab in the Field Experiment. Dr. Rajendra Timsena, I would like to hand over the floor to you.
Hello, am I
Yes,
audible?
we can hear you. Yes, very loud and clear.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dil, for a very nice and a kind introduction. And I'm also very much honored to be here. And then it is also a great pleasure for me to share some of the work that I have been engaged in the past. So without further delay, I would like to share my screen.
So you have about 10 minutes, Dr. Rajendra.
Okay. Is my slide shared?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so the title of this topic is Estimating Social Welfare Program Demand Among the Informal Workers in Urban India. So this is the evidence from the lab in the field experiment that I'm going to present here. So as I walk through, so this is the title that I'll be covering, but I'll not really dig down into the very technical aspect of this work, but I will try to rather focus on most fundamental issues on this work. So let us see. First thing, is it really important to look into the informal sector employment in the developing economies? I think that is the first question we need to really think to ourselves, right? Then, as I mentioned, so as the ILO has mentioned, that informal employment that includes self-employment and the wage workers, which are not regulated by the legal framework. Mostly it covers, in some countries it is 50%, and in some countries it is 90% of the labor force in the global south itself, right? At the same time, the social protection strategies in low and the middle income countries have evolved. But at the same time, the informal workers, rather than going into the gigs, first I'd like to take the bigger picture by putting them under the umbrella of the informal workers, because these informal workers have been traditionally been excluded from the several the welfare programs, because formal the workers usually get such kind of the welfare programs, but as these are the informal workers, so such the provision has not been there, right? Then so basically I would like to say that, like, after this COVID, what really happened, this informal sector, so like when we talk about the India, I think 90% of the workers are in the informal sector. That has been given by the data, right? Then after this COVID, what really happened? So this the informal workers, they got mostly divided into the two parts, right? Because the rise of digitalization has transformed the work structures. So work is same, but the mode of the work has been divided into the two parts, leading into the emergence of, so even it will be more appropriate to say low skilled gigs worker rather than the gigs worker, because gigs worker also has a different category, so we need to be careful on that part, because there is also the gigs workers who are doing the IT related, which is the desk work, so that might be very different than the gigs worker that I'm trying to deal here today, or that I'm trying to talk here today. So these gigs worker are the low skilled gigs worker, and the work is same, right? And maybe so then the problem is some people are doing the same work in the digital platform and some people are doing the same work in the non-digital platform, right? So what is happening within this the sector? So, but it is not that like the government has not given the effort. Yes, government has given lots of effort, and there has been they have been included in the community-based insurance social schemes and some social welfare services, universal programs are there, right? But they are not. So it is still the tip of the iceberg, right? So that is the tip of the iceberg. So what past studies have really identified? So if we look at some of the literature that has been working, that has been like focusing on this kind of informal workers, they identified that informal workers are high in demand for the healthcare. So what are the kind of the social welfare benefits these people in the informal sectors are looking for, right? So they say like healthcare program, pension benefit, employment injury insurance, maternity benefit, and other forms of social assistance. And at the same time, so even the Indian government has put on lots of effort on this in this sector and has developed programs such as school meals, childcare services, employment guarantees, food subsidies, and pension, and suggest these initiatives to enhance the well-being of these informal workers. But at the same time, so what is the problem here? So these programs are there, but they are not scaling up, right? And also because it is not equally distributed in all the states of India, right? So it is sometimes government think that this is a very important policies and they want to they want to implement that policies, but at the same time peoples might be feeling that maybe this is what they want is not what the policies exist here, and there is also sometimes a kind of information gaps. So regarding all these issues, what we try to do, we try to look into these social security preferences, right? So what we try to do in this study is we randomly selected. So what we try to do in this study is we randomly selected like 400 gigs worker, low skill gigs workers from the core of New Delhi, and try to ask them like if they were given to choose, right, which policy would they like to have, right? For example, as I mentioned, there has been lots of policies in last 15 years Indian government is trying to bring, like for school meals, child care, employment guarantee, food subsidy, social security and pension. So we made a list of such the policies, and we asked them, which do you want think is the most important one firstly? So we want to know what were their most preferred policies if they could choose. Of course, like the policies is exogenously given to us by the government, so people can only take to that, right? But here we reverse this position, and then what we try to look at here is if we ask them, okay, which policies they really want, so they can rate the policies. So this is the what first part in our studies we did. And in the second part, as a field experiment with incentivized the mechanism, what we try to do is, okay, if you are given the 6 of these policies, what are you going to choose, right? So what will be the kind of policies that people are going to choose? And when we look into the determinants of this social security in the informal sector, whether it is a digital or non-digital, so past literature have easily find out that household income, employment stability, family obligation, dependency ratio, health condition requirement, age, gender, education level, nature of work, and the awareness of the past experience really determine the social security, right? But which social security does it really determine? Is it kind of unknown, right? Then so here we call it, so to understand this, what we did this in this experiment was we call it willingness to pay for the policy, right? So we asked these people like what is their willingness to pay, and in this case what we did, we gave them experimental money. Let's say it is a 1,000 rupees. All right, so that is experimental money, and this given this 1,000 rupees, you have a 6 policy option in which how much you want to invest or how much you want to buy for each of the policies. That's what we ask for, right? So please try to understand here. What we try to do here is first we asked respondent which is the most important policy for you, right? given the list of the policies, which I'll show you later. Then second, what we asked them, the second task was to go and then buy or the purchase given the total amount of money. So total amount of money, let's say, for example, it is 1,000 rupees. And given this 1,000 rupees, how much are you willing to pay for policy 1, policy 2, policy 3, policy 4, 5, and then 6? So let us see what happens.
Can I ask you to a little bit speed up because you have about 8 minutes?
Yes, so I will not go through these experimental details. Now I'm going to show the results here, right? So let's look at this result, okay? So the choice is 1, right? So we have like total 6 choices. And to be more precise, what are the 6 choices? So it's education for children, life insurance, health insurance, pension fund, house construction, and the loan payment. So these are the 6 policies that we asked them, right? And you can see, like, for example, if you look at this first graph, so education of children is the mostly preferred one, right? So it is, so everybody thinks this is the most important one, all right? Then if you look at here, the children's education is the very important one, while the pension fund seems to be the least, right? Because we asked them to rank from top to the bottom, so we can see, so which is the most important policy. So we can see that education children is important, then the house is important, then the life insurance, then the health insurance, then the loan repayment, and the pension fund, right? So this is the ranking. Please try to understand here. So this is the ranking. Next, I would like to show you, so given this result, we are expecting that people are willing to pay more for the children's education, right? So that is what it comes to our in our mind intuitively. But then when we look at here, so average amount spent given the budget, so we give them the budget, each respondent were given the budget, right, to spend. Now where did they spend more? If you look at here, most of the people spend higher amount of their money in the house construction, right? So given this, what people think important and when people take an action, there is a mismatch. And I think this is something, it was a very interesting and also eye-opening for a practitioner and as economist. I realized that, so what we think is important and what we do in a real life is a difference. So there is a difference between this. So to really match, so rather than what we think important is what actions we want to take important, this the gap in this has to be matched more, so that exact policy when the government implements it, the scaling up of the policy can take much more better pace when we have this matching, because it acts according to the people's expectation. And so some of the reasons why such results could happen, so I'll not try to talk on this the technical parts, this one. So the platform, and then we also try to look into like whether this digital, being in a digital platform and being in non-digital platform really makes a differences across the dimension, the workers, right? But it doesn't make differences when it comes to the policies. So there was not much differences, but it looks like what people think and what people do is there the differences. And this was a very simple lab in the field experiment. So I think the takeaway from here is, so there is a difference in people's action. And again, we are dealing with a very low skilled gigs worker, right? So while designing the policies, such studies need to be done more in a rigorous scale to identify exactly the fit the policy that can scale up very quickly and that everybody would like to adopt. So the adaptation rate of the policy will be higher. So because there has been these issues, so we are trying to provide our resolution to this the research gap. And with this, I think I'd like to uh, wrap up my presentation as we are running out of the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Raja, for sharing your very insightful paper from India, and you have actually clearly shown how the preference of the demand for social programs by gigs worker in India, and you really highlighted the controversial thinking that lies behind what they prefer and what they actually opt for. So I think that was very, very crucial, very important, and I'm sure like it will make a valuable contributions, and we'll be able to hear more from others regarding the comments for your papers. But let me go ahead and invite our second speaker. Our second speaker is Dr. Joseph Han. Dr. Joseph Han is a research fellow at Korean Development Institute, KDI, Korea. He will present a paper titled Social Protections for Platform Worker, the Case of Korea. So let me invite Dr. Joseph to take on the floor and share his insightful presentation from Korea.
Thank you, Dr. Lau. I'm gonna share my screen.
Yes, please.
Can you see?
No, yes, now we can see.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about social protection for platform workers in the context of South Korea. So my presentation has three parts. The first one is about the rise of platform labor in Korea, and the second part is about the expansion of social insurance in response to the rise of platform labor, especially in the areas of IACI and EI, which are the corresponding insurances in Korea to the workers' compensation and unemployment insurance. The third part will be about protecting workers' rights. So the platform labor in Korea has been on the rise, as in many other countries, especially during the pandemic. So the food delivery apps are very popular, and there are three major like apps in Korea, like Baemin, Yogiyo, and Coupangit. These are the three major apps. And mobility apps are absolutely popular, but mostly dominated by this Kakao T. And Uber recently re-entered this market, and there's some competition going on. And there are also other like websites which mediates local talents like Sumgo, Kumo, which get like from repair and cleaning to like IT programming and design and translation. And there are also data labeling websites. So the definition of platform worker is not established yet, but by the Ministry of Employment and Labor and Korea Employment and Information Services, the estimated size of platform workers by broad definition is about 11% of the entire workforce. And then by narrow definition, which is about the platform, when the platform workers are actually assigned work from the platform itself, it's 3%, but the speed of the increase is quite fast during the pandemic. Nowadays, it's a little bit like maintaining the size, but we expect it will grow again soon. So the rise of platform labor provides both opportunities and challenges. There are absolutely huge consumer surplus, and we expect some productivity gains in lagging behind sectors in Korea, which are mostly the traditional service sectors. And also for workers, it's good to have alternative jobs or fallback options when, especially in a segmented labor market. So it's a good things. But there has been a serious concern that digital platforms may deteriorate working conditions, and because they are mostly like considered as freelancers or self-employed workers, and digital platforms can avoid the labor regulations and they can enjoy so-called regulatory arbitrages according to OECD, and that can actually harm the working conditions of all workers, not just platform workers. So the social protection for platform workers are important, but there has been not many before the pandemic. So uh, our the discussion in Korea has been has been some extension to the traditional discussions on special type workers. So what are the special type workers? It's kind of insurance planners, visiting tutors like construction, like machinery operators, cargo truck drivers, who are work with like some fixed contracts with some a few number of employers, but they are kind of independent. They are treated as independent contractors. So these are the special type workers, and the platform workers are discussed in this context. So the coverage for these platform workers was quite limited, although Korea has the national health insurance, which is mandatory for all. So all workers, all people should be a contributor or a family member of contributor are all covered by this health insurance. And national pension is also open to everyone, like mandatory for employees and voluntary for all others. There are some issues about how to distribute, how to divide the contribution between employers and employees, but these two insurance are not much subject of discussions, but the industrial accident compensation insurance, which are the correspondent insurance of workers' compensation, uh, was only for employees and only a few number of like special type workers. And the employment insurance was also only for employees, although it was open for self-employed workers, but less than 1% of self-employed workers were covered before the pandemic, and it is still in the same situation. So I will briefly introduce the process of the expansion of social insurance. So although I'm an economist, but I had to work with like legal experts and all kinds of experts from different fields. So uh, here I will talk about that kind of experience as well. So the social insurance for platform workers was was expanded first to special type workers and then to labor providers. What are these terms like? So I'll explain about that first. The special type workers are defined in the IACI Act as a person who provides labor in a manner similar to an employee, regardless of the form of the contract, but is not covered by the Labor Standards Act and thus requires protection from occupational injuries. So this was the idea, and this was the goal to protect this type of workers. But in the actual implementation, there were many like compromises and like some restrictions. So there was the condition that the special type worker should be exclusively tied to a business to be covered by this insurance, and with a non-employer status, which is kind of okay, and in an occupation prescribed by presidential decree. So this is also okay because it's not always easy to deal with all kinds of occupations. And there was also another condition that a worker can voluntarily apply for exemption without any specific reason. So in reality, there are many kind of involuntary application for exemption. So this was also another kind of compromise in the previous act. And this kind of concept was changed to labor provider, which is a person who directly provides labor for business that is not their own and receives compensation in non-occupation prescribed by presidential decree. So this is quite general, but still there is the restriction on occupations. So this is this work, and still there is some concept that it's for a business that is not their own. So after these
Dr. Joseph, you
changes,
have 7 minutes more. Just
yeah,
wanted to
okay,
remind you of.
sure. So 7 minutes. So subscribers of the IACI increased rapidly after the restriction on voluntary exemption. So this was kind of critical first, and then it again increased very rapidly after the repealing the exclusivity condition. So in the case, it kind of the cases increased very fastly, and then actually there are duplicate cases per individual. So because the platform workers are usually like working for like several different businesses. So in that case, we had this kind of big increase. So the subscribers for the employment insurance also increased fastly. I will not repeat these numbers, but it increased a lot within a very limited time window. So was it really effective protection? I think it partly protects the workers, especially the IASCI, the workers' compensation insurance. Like the Baemin workers, the food delivery app workers are now among the highest number of the IACI claims. So it protects workers from injuries or like other types of accidents. But the expansion of employment insurance is kind of controversial. So there is a moral hazard concern, and under the fund sustainability condition, and it has to limit the involuntary closing of business to receive the unemployment benefits. So it's not really effective protection in that case. So other options such as unemployment assistance could be a better option in that case. So for workers first, I'll be very brief about this. Like I think many people are very well aware of these issues, the misclassification issues. So there are two options. So under regulation or over regulation, and actually currently like Korea is doing nothing actually. So we are trying to like make a law about to protect all labor providers, but it's just ongoing efforts. Uh, so there are like some solutions. The previous solutions are California's AB5, the ABC test, or recent EU's platform work directive is somewhat similar spirit with this ABC test, but they do not explicitly list the conditions. So uh, but here, what really matters is digital platforms' monopsony power. So digital platforms have naturally have tendency to have market power, and then uh, digital platforms can also have monopsony power over platform workers. So, for example, the Amazon Mechanical Turk has significant monopsony power over the Turk workers. And in that case, workers cannot easily quit, even though the working conditions become worse than before. So there are no alternatives. And in the area of AI, the algorithms can really lead to worse outcomes for workers under monopsony power. So algorithms can push workers to work longer hours under riskier conditions, and algorithms may unfairly exclude certain workers based on perceived risks. So this monopsony power should be measured, and with my colleague, with my coworker at KDI, we studied the monopsony power of digital platforms. So in the two sectors, first is IT freelancer, and the other one is food delivery. So for the IT freelancer, so I we estimated actually gathered by web scraping of over like 7 months. We gathered the data from a large digital platform, and we estimated how much uh, whether the labor supply really respond to the wages. So when the wages go down, then the duration of job vacancy becomes shorter, we estimated. So it it seemed that doesn't respond, which means there is significant monopsony power, but after we controlling for several other factors, especially the form fixed effects, we see it actually responds. So the labor supply elasticity is quite high and it's kind of normal with compared to the offline sectors. So I think for IT freelancer sector is fine. But in the food delivery sector, the HHI is quite high. Its normal standard is 2,500, but it's over 5,000. And especially three major apps are over 4,000. And we surveyed like 250 the food delivery like workers, and then they responded there they have have some problems. But there is some competition going on, and the HHI decreases over time. So it quite is kind of difficult to judge in the case. So what we suppose what we propose is a monopsony power-based approach, which is kind of a more flexible than the AB5 or the ABC test or previous other approaches. So regularly monitoring large digital platforms and imposing stronger regulations for monopsony digital firms. So in case of the algorithm control, there is the controversy between the right to explanation and trade secret protection. So in the case, the balance should shift toward workers' rights, depending on the degree of monopsony power. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph, for your wonderful presentations. I think bringing the case of Korea was very useful. We heard the case of India, and now hearing the case of Korea, we find that the challenges faced by gig workers, irrespective of where they are, is similar and it's very challenging as to how we can actually help gig workers. The problem of overregulations and underregulation. So you clearly highlighted the challenges faced by gigs worker in Korea. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Now I'd like to go on and invite our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Stephanie Santos. She's a visiting fellow at the University of Cambridge. She will be presenting the case, the gig economy through a gender lens, insight from Southeast Asia. So here, I think we'll be able to hear about the cases from Southeast Asia, which is different from other two regions that was presented. And also we'll try to look at this, the problem of gigs economy through a gender lens. Without wasting much time, let me invite Dr. Stephanie Santosa, please. Floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Rowett. And let me just share my screen really quickly. Okay, are you seeing the presentation right now?
Yes,
okay.
Very clear.
Thank you. So good morning. I would like to start with thanking the Asian Development Bank Institute for putting this event together. I'm very grateful to the organizers for their work, and it's a privilege for me to be in conversation with fellow panelists, discussants, and everybody who's attending this event today. So in this talk, I draw from feminist science and technology studies and Asian cultural studies to argue that internet and communications technologies have facilitated even more exploitative forms of labor characterized by high degrees of surveillance and algorithmic governance, which Dr. Han has touched upon. However, while the pandemic has been a tipping point towards naturalizing these exploitative work conditions, the other direction or possibility also shows gig workers themselves are using these platforms to organize, to develop new capacities and socialities that allow workers to survive and thrive. And I support this argument through findings from my fieldwork in Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And so let's start with a short discussion of why gender analysis makes for good public policy. The feminist principles of intersectionality hold that factors such as race, as class, as gender These affect how people experience their world. So in terms of policy, this means that to center the knowledge and testimonies of people who experience multiple forms of marginalization will necessarily make for more representative and responsive policies. So as an example, the issue of public transportation, many Asian cities sought to add buses and train cars during rush hour, but research from the ADB showed that this would not help many women who used public transportation during off-peak hours, because the work of picking up kids, of food shopping, that's gendered labor. The ADB report also highlighted women's safety concerns. There's difficulty in climbing dark staircases while you're carrying groceries or children. And so instead of more trains at rush hour, these findings highlighted the need for transportation throughout the day, for better lighting, for escalators, for train doors that needed to stay open longer to accommodate women who were carrying groceries and strollers. So these changes also serve to benefit elderly people, people with disabilities. So what we see here is that the material effect of intersectional analysis is more responsive policies for a wider group of people. So what does intersectional analysis then reveal about gig work and platform labor, especially when we center Southeast Asia? So one of the challenges
これはど
here,
うすりゃいいんだろうな。
one of the challenges here is the lack of disaggregated data. So the figures from 2023 show that these figures give us a sense of the number of gig workers, but it remains difficult just from these figures to see who's working when and how. But what we do know, however, is that platform companies are working hard to make this labor more effective or more attractive to people and we can see here from the screen capture from Grab website, more attractive by promising to be a different kind of employer. So they promise more control, more flexibility, more decision-making for workers. We see that in this screenshot, right? Make deliveries any way you want, multiple ways of earning with us. But what we can also see from the testimonial of drivers is, first of all, we can see from these screenshots is how platform companies mobilize the bodies of women and other marginalized people in creating this narrative of a different kind of employer. So to the left, we see Rosanna Ali, who's identified as a woman with cerebral palsy and also as a Grab rider partner. Rider partner is doing a lot of work here. So their testimonies generate cultural capital for platform economies who are then constructed as benevolent employers who hire the elderly, who hire people with disabilities. But Joel here notes, but when Joel here notes that he used his only money of 500 pesos as a deposit, we can already glean how these buy-in costs are barriers for many people, especially women who have less disposable income. And then to the right, Emelinda's narrative, pushing herself to provide for the needs of her family, also hints at larger systemic failures, the lack of safety needs for vulnerable populations. We also see here a closer read of the proposed benefit shows the kind of ambiguous and sometimes we call it escape language that platform companies use to evade responsibility for their employees. So ostensibly, drivers are entitled to benefits like calamity insurance and housing assistance, but the language itself is couched in escape phrases. Drivers may request on a case-to-case basis. And the difficulty of accessing these benefits becomes even more apparent when we look at what workers themselves are saying. And in the next slides, what I'll be showing is the situated testimony from vloggers, from gig workers who are using modes of cultural production to talk about their lives and their labor. So here, for example, we hear from Aulia, who is a writer from Gojek, and she notes that insurance only kicks in if a driver dies, basically in an accident. Then they can get 50 million rupiah, which is about 3,000 US dollars. But there's this phrase, must we die first, right? So it's a testament to the difficulty of accessing promised benefits, and also a testament to how many of the riders, many of platform workers who do location-based work, which is the focus of this talk, are themselves treated as disposable. Also, what else do rider testimonies reveal about their relationship with the platform? And here, Joanna, who is a driver for Food Panda from the Philippines, talks about the opacity of algorithms, right? She talks about a suspension that she received, but she never got any clarity as to why. And this is something that is shared by many gig workers in interviews and also in their own cultural production. So there's no explanation for the penalties and rewards. The reward here is being moved up to batch 3. So that there are different tiers in which you earn higher pay, but there's no clarity on how to move from tier to tier. So testimonies such as this belie the platform companies' claims that workers can make their own decisions about when and how to work. These testimonies also show how workers are subjected to intense degrees of algorithmic governance. Their movements and work hours are highly controlled by companies, akin to regular employees, even as they are classified as independent contractors, as Dean Sonobe noted earlier. So that disjunct in terms of being treated as a regular employee, but without the benefits of being a regular employee is an experience that was shared across the board. So these previous slides show experiences of vulnerability that are shared by many marginalized workers, but these next slides highlight very gendered experiences, so experiences that are shared more by women. So here we see Alia again, who is sharing one of her experiences of being sexually harassed, right? And she was driving, the driver started to harass her, and she had to remain polite, right? That phrase is important there because also this is a person who is in her car who can potentially hurt her. And it was an experience that was not rare, right? So many women drivers reported similar experiences in varying degrees. So in the Philippines, for example, women motorcycle drivers describe being groped, right? So under the pretense that the passenger is hanging on for balance. Let me see. And then this slide shows other difficulties that arise that are also more faced by women gig workers. So starting at the end, this idea of the double burden of women who are wage workers and then do the unwaged reproductive labor at home. That is a systemic problem that's common to all workers, not just women gig workers, but all women workers. Urinary tract infections were reported among women drivers in Manila, Jakarta, and Bangkok due to the lack of publicly accessible restrooms. So they can't just go on the side of the road like their male counterparts. And in Bangkok, there were women drivers who actually reported getting sick, getting illnesses akin to sexually transmitted diseases from unclean restrooms, and then they were harassed when they sought treatment for this. So there's many problems in terms of that experience. Many women drivers in Jakarta, in particular, reported high rates of ride cancellations. They suspect from men who do not wish to be driven around by women. Women also reported harassment from their fellow workers, from fellow riders and drivers as well. And this kind of harassment makes women stay away from waiting areas where most drivers congregate. These waiting areas are typically nearer restaurants. They're typically in places that provide shade or protection from the rain. So staying away from these waiting areas has significant effect, right, on their earnings as well as their comfort and possibly their health. So after much advocacy on the part of drivers, Grab Indonesia tried to address the problem of harassment through technoliberal means. So technoliberalism here is a phrase drawn from feminist theory again, and that's basically looking to technological solutions, right? To liberate, to solve social problems. So in this case, what Grab Indonesia
Dr.
did.
Santosa, you have got 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you, sir. So what Grab did was to, instead of canceling problematic customers' accounts and banning them from the platform, Grab just stopped assigning rides to women during rush hour and gave them delivery orders instead. So that was the solution to the harassment. But what it ended up doing, as we see from Aulia's testimony here, is that it cut into her income. So there's actually a similar program called Lady Grab that gives women customers the option of requesting a female driver for an additional fee. And what we see from here is that it's women customers and women drivers who end up paying more, right, due to the issue of harassment of men. And let me see. So some of the other solutions that I would just like to talk about here. So we see here that mutual aid groups have been, instead of technoliberal solutions, mutual aid groups have been very important in terms of providing support for drivers. So in Thailand, Grab riders in Bangkok, for example, they formed a line group that grew to over 700 members to establish a mutual aid fund. And this fund is made available so that members can get treatment for urinary tract infection and lower back pain and other job-related injuries that are not seen as job-related and therefore are denied assistance by Grab. So in the Philippines, there's a lady riders union where they themselves got together and they're the ones who are helping one another buy the grab bars that you put at the back of motorcycles, so that the hope is that men riders would hold onto that instead of groping them. And I'm pointing to these mutual aid groups as women-led initiatives, right? Which makes sense given intersectional analysis. These are vibrant examples of the power and significance of mutual aid. So in conclusion, the experiences of women gig workers illuminates the vulnerability of all platform workers, as well as the creative ways that workers are organizing and advocating for themselves. So I want to end this talk with an invitation. Gig workers have been advocating and analyzing and speaking about their experiences of emerging precarities. And many of these solidarity groups are led by women who advocate for themselves at great risk to their livelihood and their well-being. The very least we owe them is our solidarity, and more importantly, they should be part of conversations such as this. So these are just some of the advocacy organizations that we should be in solidarity with, and these are the voices that should be central towards engendering more just gig economies. So thank you all for your attention. I look forward to our continued conversations. Salamat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Santosa, for sharing the case, very beautiful case from Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand. I think in the previous discussions, we talked about the problem faced by gig worker in general, but you really came forward and shared the problems that's very, very pertinent to female gig workers. And it's really, I think you really clearly highlighted the needs for policies and attention to protect female gig workers so that, like, they can do their work well and they have their rights that's being protected. So thank you so much. I think it was wonderful presentations. We really appreciate. Now I think I would like to go forward and invite our discussion. We have very prominent speakers here at the discussion. Our first discussion is Professor Babu Metu. He's the professor from National Law School of Indian University. I think we are very delighted to have you, Professor Methu, for accepting our invitations, and we really look forward to hearing from you because being a professor of law school, I'm sure like you have so many things to share with us. Professor Methu, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, for giving this nice introduction and providing us the opportunity to meet and interact with friends for the first time. I must begin by mentioning that the remarks by Dean Sonobe and Ms. Song and all the three speakers have helped me contextualize what I would like to say quite a bit. Of course, there are many limitations in the participation of this form. Notwithstanding that, let me begin. In the vast universe of work in India, now said to be in the range of 600 million. Now, out of this 600 million, 93% are in the informal sector. That is what the National Commission for Enterprises in the Unorganized Sector has pointed out. And so out of this 93%, gig is only a small part, but it's an expanding area of work. The Niti Aayog, which is a policy think tank of the government of India, says that the size of the gig and platform workers was 7.7 million in 2020-2021. Within another 5 years, this number will increase threefold. Of course, I have heard observations about the fact that this segment is low skilled. It is important for me to mention that when we look at standards for measuring skill levels, especially the Minimum Wage Act, we would classify these workers in the semi-skilled category because they are literate and capable of using the handheld device in a very significant manner. There has been continuous effort to deny the coverage of labor jurisprudence in India to the unorganized sector. And this is done through various innovative or rather invented methods. And I must say that the most unique among them is so far as gig and platform workers are concerned, especially in India. In India, the recent laws that are proposed, that is called the Social Security Code of 2020. This reverses the gradual expansion of labor jurisprudence to cover even the unorganized sector. How does it reverse this process? It reverses it by saying that the gig and platform worker, the new definition is somebody who does not enjoy an employer-employee relationship. That has become a tremendous barrier to gig and platform workers. It's like a preemptive blow to exclude gig and platform workers from expanding labor jurisprudence. What are the basic minimum labor standards available in India? I won't take much time on this, but I think it's something useful to ponder upon for those who are further interested in exploring this area. I must say that the narrative that gives protection to all workers through the ILO, the core labor standards and decent conditions of work, can be positively compared with provisions in the Constitution of India dealing with fundamental rights and dealing with directive principles of state policy. So unlike what the speakers were doing, I want to begin with a little focus on freedom of association and collective bargaining. I do this because whether you're talking of wages or about social security or any kind of protection of labor or even gender equality, I would like to make a statement that the extent of implementation of labor laws in India is directly proportional to the extent of unionization. And so even though we have a 1926 law called the Trade Union Act, gig workers and platform workers have been denied that. However, there is a very surprising innovation that has happened through the Industrial Relations Code of 2020, the 4 new codes that the government of India has already adopted. And that innovation expands the definition of the gig and platform workers also. And that is done by borrowing a definition from the Unorganized Workers Social Security Act. As a result of this, the workers will now be covered by even the trade union protection laws, including not only registration, but even recognition of trade unions, compulsory recognition, which then leads to compulsory collective bargaining. And that will be applicable even to home-based workers, to self-employed workers. And therefore, even though there is no employer-employee relationship, they'll get this benefit. The other thing I want to mention is social security in reality for those who are marginalized is heavily dependent upon what is the wage that you get. And so the wage anarchy in India is also quite sad. Even the minimum wage, a very low level of minimum wage that is prescribed by various state legislations in India is, not available to gig and platform workers. We have done some research studies in Bangalore among food delivery workers and taxi drivers, and found only if they work for more than 12 hours will they come close to the lowest level of minimum wage prescribed. And therefore, this minimum wage question requires equal attraction. Coming to the social security part, the social protection in our country is, with reference to what we call as social security. There, the ILO Convention 102, as you are aware, prescribes 9 standards to be observed. Now, in India, we have the retirement law, which we call Employees Provident Fund Act, and another law which is meant for especially health and accident at work, called the Employee State Insurance Law. Now, where these laws apply, then all the 9 standards laid down by the ILO are satisfied. But unfortunately, this depends upon definitional clauses, numerical thresholds. The retirement benefit is not available unless workers are working in an establishment with at least 20 workers. And health available only in an establishment where there are 10 workers. Of course, I mentioned to you already the innovative methods that are used to deny social security and other protection. The leading dimension about misclassification, which has led to the exclusion of gig workers, we are happy that the EU declaration on the subject has challenged misclassification, and they are now talking about presumption of employment. Unfortunately, it's a rebuttable presumption, but that is certainly a useful technique. One notices that the ILO's proposed convention also is moving in a healthy dimension. But I must say, in Indian labor law, there is tremendous scope for innovative application. If you look at the vast volume of Indian labor law and you study the typologies of Indian labor law, we have found that we can get over this difficulty of definition by using the expression any person who is working in a scheduled employment. We have done that, and 2 states in India are dealing with that kind of a new legislative framework. One is the state of Rajasthan, and the other is the state from where I come. And we have drafted, the Center for Labor Studies at the National Law School, we have drafted a legislation for gig and platform workers, But unfortunately, the combined influence of the aggregators over the labor department has been so huge that it's been difficult to get the benefit of such innovation. Yes, I also agree with Professor Stephanie that the gender analysis is very vital for us. While she mentioned race and class, in India, you also have the caste system. The caste is used in order to exclude even men workers, let alone women workers. And however, I must say that so far as transport, subsidization of transport is concerned, there are some states in which that subsidization has certainly helped mobility for women workers. Of course, he rightly pointed out that there may be a problem when it comes to picking up children from school. And this is partially helped maybe because of the hangover of the joint family in India. So you have other human resources available to solve and address that problem. The problem is not many women workers in the food delivery section, almost absent, but in the taxis it is beginning, and its visibility is now seen. There is more of them are prevalent among beauticians and care workers and even domestic workers. We must make
May I ask you to conclude, please?
Okay, I think I'll just conclude by saying that maternity benefit is denied for women workers as a result of some of the aspects that I mentioned earlier. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Methu. I think you really highlighted clearly the problem of unionizations. I think lack of unionization, trade union is one of the major problems that we see among gig workers. You really showed us the way how through trade union we could actually increase or improve the social protection mechanism within the gig worker, and also the importance of legislation. I think those were very clearly highlighted. And you also brought about many dimensions of gender that were, and other social inclusion aspects like caste, and which was actually not discussed in our discussion. Thank you so much. I think you really brought in very valuable information. Now we have another very important, very well-established scholar who will be talking, will be the discussion. It's Dr. Alex Ivancho. He is Senior Social Protections and Job Specialist from Human and Social Development Sectors Office at Asian Development Bank. He has extreme knowledge and experience, and he has written a number of papers in this area. We are very fortunate that you found time for us, Dr. Alex, and we really look forward to hearing your views and comments on gigs workers. Floor to you.
Thank you very much, Dil. First of all, I want to confirm if you can hear me well.
Yes, okay. Very well.
Thank you. First of all, I appreciate invitation to be discussed in this event. I think it's a very important topic, which is increasingly of interest not only in this region, but I think globally. I also think that we had a fantastic opportunity to see very different perspectives already from all the presenters, and also a legal perspective from Professor Methu. So I will just focus on some of the key findings and reflect on some of the findings that I see especially illuminating. So starting with the first presentation, I think the main questions in that research was to what extent the digital platform workers differ from non-platform workers in terms of their social security preferences and the willingness to pay. The first finding there is really that certain security options have higher preference. For example, education of children seems to be much more preferred versus, for example, pension fund contribution. So one reflection I have there, and it's not necessarily a question, I think it's more a reflection, is what comes to my mind is that what people think about what is most important will, of course, depend on on their knowledge base. And what I mean by that is that if they don't know much about pension options, for example, and what they can count for in old age, then maybe by definition they will be thinking of it as a less important factor. Second, and I think that also brings for me the importance of financial, what I call financial literacy for old age, where basically importance of preparing people for old age while they're still young. So basically building that knowledge base of what these people can expect in old age in terms of social insurance, how they can contribute early, what types of jobs they can do, and how different types of jobs they can secure more stable financial future in old age. The second reflection on this finding is that I was also thinking to what extent these preferences are reflections of immediate versus long-term needs. For instance, if I am a person who is a worker in my mid-30s with kids of school age, the education will be in my immediate preference function, but my pension is still like 20, 30 years away. So maybe that also explains why preferences for pension, for example, is lower than preference for education of children. So that's just a couple of reflection on the first finding. The second very important finding of this work is that digital workers differ in many dimensions from or digital platform workers differ in many dimensions from non-platform workers. So, for example, digital workers are generally younger, they are more educated, they tend to be more likely to be males. What was interesting is there was not enough time to discuss the details and some variables of this research, but what I also find interesting is that they're likely to be more open and they have a high degree of self-control, for example, but less greed. So of course we can discuss how this is measured, but I think that's very interesting findings in itself. And I think to me that confirms that there is a strong self-selection bias that is happening in the first place in terms of into digital versus non-digital jobs. And I think it would be great to have more research done on this, because I think that was just one segment of the population that was researched, which is kind of low-skilled gig workers. But I think it would be good to expand this and understand better how people actually choose themselves into these professions and occupations. The third finding is that basically ceteris paribus, all things being other things being equal, platform and non-platform workers have similar preference for social security options and similar willingness to pay. Platform workers seem to have a stronger preference for life insurance, but this result does not hold when we basically control for individual traits and characteristics. So what basically it tells us basically it doesn't matter whether you enter platform non-platform. You do want to have certain social security options available to you. And the fourth finding is that individual characteristics do matter. For example, according to results, risk tolerance is strongly correlated with the preference for the pension fund. Interpretation of this, that if I'm less risk tolerant, I would be more likely to give more importance to future pension. More risk tolerant people exhibit less willingness to pay for life insurance, for example. So I think that these results to me are quite expected and quite rational. So with regard to a second presentation by Dr. Joseph Hahn, I find it first of all extremely relevant, because we are trying increasingly to learn from countries that actually implement new approaches of dealing with the challenge of inclusion of gig and platform work in social insurance. And what I find very interesting is that this approach of social insurance expansion through the shift from what is called special type workers to labor providers definitions, and I kind of find it very very interesting approach, because in a way, just changing the definition itself, I think we can achieve sometime an incredible thing, because we by changing this definition to labor providers, basically expand our base for inclusion of this type of workers into social insurance. So I found that this to be a very neat and interesting feature of what Korea is trying to do. The second very important feature is that the importance of restriction on voluntary participation in insurance. I think we also find some other countries, not only in the region but globally, which shows that actually having these features mandatory rather than voluntary actually improves participation and improves coverage by social insurance of these types of workers. Very interesting, I think, aspect for me was that also the issue of relevance of employment insurance, or we can also call it unemployment insurance, for self-employed and platform workers. And the question here is, should the focus rather be for this group of workers on other types of insurance? Because by definition, people who choose themselves into self-employed or platform work, maybe they understand that they're not going to get the same level of employment on unemployment insurance as regular employees with written contracts. And the last point was about the danger of AI-powered algorithms for working conditions. I think that also came very strongly as something that we need to be aware of. But then the big question is who and how would or should regulate those issues. And of course, then the question becomes as well, what is the role of the state in this type of regulation? So. And finally, on the last presentation by Dr. Stephanie Santos, I think she was able to bring a human story into this discussion today, which was excellent. I think what for me the main takeaways is that this danger of what she described as algorithmic governance and the basically as possibilities that it may lead to exploitation or exploitative working conditions, which needs to be again monitored and regulated. She also highlighted many challenges of gig workers based on gender, but I think also what for me was interesting in the presentation, that there also seems like a lot of solutions for this also emerge naturally from dealing with these types of experiences, which I think is very good. This is very good to see. Finally, just I want to make three final points. I think when we talk about workforce in our region, which is East Asia and Pacific, there are also things that, I mean, in terms of gender inequalities, we need to also remind ourselves that many women continue to work and still their work is not recognized. For example, women doing basically home care work, home-based work, and I think it's a huge issue that goes obviously well beyond gig or platform work, because there's still many people are women out there who basically do this unpaid family work, and I think we need to also kind of think about how we include this segment of the labor market in social insurance. The second issue is that the importance of the private sector initiatives in improving working conditions. I know that, for example, Grab has several initiatives. They look at how they actually can provide certain types of social security services to the users. And the final point I want to make is that has not kind of, I think, was not resonated today is what aging population in the region means in terms of preparedness for gig and platform work. And again, in this regard, I know that South Korea is doing a lot of great things. I was actually in Korea last year, and we visited a few day activity centers for elderly people, where they provide not only daily activities, but also provide education for the use, for example, of digital tools. So people in the 60s, 70s, and sometimes 80s who are there, they can actually get lessons and get basically practice experience in how to use different tools and apps and applications. And they even have apprenticeships for people age 60 and above, and so forth. So I think looking at the quickly, rapidly labor force in the region, I think from the gig platform perspective, we also need to think that that's going to be a reality going forward. And I think all of the countries in the regions need to start looking at how do we improve also participation of a more elderly cohort in the labor market in that regard. I will stop here, and thank you again for all the wonderful presentations today.
Thank you, Dr. Alex, for your very critical remarks on all the three papers, and also highlighting those three very critical issues that our conference, actually the presenter could not look at it, and these are very, very vital, and it's very, very important, and it needs lots of attention and further research on these three areas that you have highlighted. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I listened carefully to your discussion. To your discussions. I learned a lot, especially thank you to Alex. You summarized it very well and suggested good takeaways from your perspective. I shared your takeaways, so I don't have to repeat the takeaways as my conclusion. I just want to share my ideas about this gig economy. Actually, through today's discussion, I realized that this issue is really matter. Not only in Korea, but also India, Indonesia, probably South Asia also faces similar situations. And also, not only platform workers, but also non-platform workers, their preference, their hope for the Social Security is similar. But given the different aspect of gig workers, a special approach here needs to be done. And especially gender issue also exists even in gig workers. Therefore, as some speaker mentioned, that we need to special care and consideration for gender, especially equality of gender. And another one is Alex mentioned that not only platform workers, house-based, there are other workers type, the house-based workers, and also old-age workers. Also, special care, special treatment should be done. So, as for policymakers, we may cover those issues with changing the definition of labor or workers, or we can set up special treatment for their specific working groups. Or many approaches can be tried, but the main thing is that we are trying to treat people equally. That's the spirit. In that mind, we can address many problems. This webinar is also very good in that sense. Thank you so much for your contribution.